On today's episode of Locked On Sooners, we're going to get into what Brent Venables had to say about the offensive line, what's special about Billy Bowman, and his thoughts on the college football playoff on today's episode of Locked On Sooners.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, Sooner Nation, and welcome to Locked On Sooners. I'd like to thank LinkedIn Jobs for being the official college football recruiting sponsor across the Locked On College Network. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. Thank you for joining us. My name is John Williams. You can follow me on Twitter at John9Williams. You can read my work covering the Oklahoma Sooners over at the Sooners Wire. He's Josh Helmer. You can follow him on Twitter at JoshOnRef. You can also hear him Monday through Friday on 94.7 The Ref in Norman. Josh, man, Brent Venables speaks. We listen. It's all about BV right now. So we had some great words from him about the offensive line, special teams play from Billy Bowman, as well as the College Football Playoff Committee. Anything that stuck out to you initially just from Brent Venables' kind of first post-game press conference or post-game media availability, I guess is the better way to say it, before we launch into the offensive line comment?
Well, I think what you would expect, right? He's going to say a lot of positive things about Kent State, which is, hey, he's got this head coach thing down pat, baby. He's ready to go. Selling us on why Kent State, hey, this is a bowl team, and look out, they contended for a conference championship a season ago. So, I mean, just he's good at that, that portion of it. Sold me a little bit. It's like, oh, I guess this team's a little bit better than I thought they were. But ultimately, hey, it's Kent State, right? And this press conference is about Oklahoma and what he learned and really kind of what we collectively learned about OU. So really some of the cuts that we have and we're going to share with everybody tonight, I thought was what kind of grabbed me the most, John.
Well, let's hear what Brent Venables had to say about the offensive line play from Saturday's win over UTEP.
Well, again, I think you look at the score and the game control at the end of the day, I think is important. And getting up 21-0, it happened in like 62 seconds, I think is a great thing. You know, some people, oh man, you worry about scoring so fast? No. You know what it does? It puts a tremendous amount of pressure on the opponent, whether you got to go out there and play again or not. You know how to, again, get off the field, go 3 and out, you know, play better, you know, play with better fundamentals and technique and, you know, all those things. So they were solid, you know, as a group solid, and we got to finish better. You know, just if you said, what's the one area or where do you need to improve it? Just we got to finish plays better from snap to whistle with a tougher mindset and be a little cleaner in some areas and protection and in the run game both. But finishing guys off, I think there's more to be had. Whether you give the quarterback a little more time and keep him cleaner, or again, you're finishing guys off on that second, that third level where you give an opportunity for to create more big plays.
That's a really interesting comment because that's what we want to see out of this offensive line and really out of this team is big play production. And they had a few. I mean, had a big run by Eric Gray. Marcus Major had a big run. Obviously, the Gavin Freeman run was huge. And then you had the Dylan Gabriel touchdown run, which was a 12-yarder. I think it's good to note that while they played well and they racked up 259 yards of rushing, Dylan Gabriel was only sacked a couple times, that there's room for improvement still with this offensive line. And I think it's also worth noting that they didn't have their starting right tackle as well.
Well, and I don't have that clip here for you. Maybe we can share it with you later in the week. But Dean Blevins had kind of followed up really that line of questioning right there about the offensive line. Just asking about Wanye Morris's status. And the update there from Brent Venables is when he's back, he's going to have the chance to be a starting guy for Oklahoma. I mean, he was point blank asked if, Wanye Morris, when he comes back, is he someone that's going to have that chance to be right back into a starting role? And Brent Venables basically said, yeah, absolutely. So, no, you're right. That is it's an important loss for Oklahoma. You hope that Wanye Morris is back soon, and whatever issues collectively he's had, he puts behind him. And maybe that's one of the missing pieces to really make this a great Oklahoma offensive line. The other reason I wanted to share that clip with you, John, was the fact that, first off, Brent Venables gets asked about Oklahoma's offensive line. How do you grade this group and tempo and how they're handling and everything? And I love that Brent Venables right off the top says something that we haven't heard a lot from head coaches, when they talk about tempo. And it's always been something that kind of I've felt or thought. We constantly hear that, if you go too fast, it sets the defense up to be really, really tired and sluggish, and it sets them up to play from behind the 8-ball. Brent Venables said, play better defensively. I love that from him. We don't hear that a lot.
Well, and also it's like play better offensively. If you're concerned about the offense going 3 and out and the defense having to get back on the field, like just be better, like all around, be better. And again, it's complementary football. I think it's worth noting, like, this is going to be a little bit different. I don't think we're going to get as much coach speak. He's like, we got up 21-0 within 62 seconds. Like, that's great. I mean, I have 62 seconds from the last possession. That's a great thing. Like, you can't be mad about that. And the obvious answer there is it does put a ton of pressure on the offense to come out and actually try to score. So, yeah, I like what he had to say there. I do think that when I kind of watched back through the game a little bit today, I did notice some areas where, the offensive line was kind of getting pushed around at times, especially at left guard. McCade Matire, this is a guy that we've been excited about. He walked in, was kind of a starter from the get-go. And there were a couple snaps where I saw him getting pushed back into the backfield. And I don't know if that's just still kind of getting his legs under him. First game of the season sort of a thing. He didn't have Anton Harrison playing next to him. Again, anytime you switch offensive linemen around, it's going to throw things for a loop a little bit. He had Tyler Guyton, who had a solid game, but again, it's not the guy he's used to playing next to. That can cause some disruption to just timing and communication and all that stuff. So I do think that there's still room for improvement. I'm not necessarily concerned yet. Once we get kind of later into the season, if we're starting to see more of this offensive line kind of breakdown, then we might have some cause for concern. But again, it's still early in the season. The competition's not fierce just yet. And sometimes it takes time to kind of build your offensive line and build the chemistry and continuity and communication that goes into that. It's a whole different thing once you get from fall camp to your first game of the season.
Well, McCade Matire, again, is somebody that came to Oklahoma. Ton of hype around him because, look, he's somebody that was a proven Power 5 starter for 25 plus games at Cal, right? So that alone, you're kind of just excited about the fact that this is somebody that's been through the ringer. But you know what? That's 0 starts before this past weekend at the University of Oklahoma. So while that's great and that's a ton of experience, ultimately, yeah, if you're getting pushed around, then guess what? I'm looking at the depth chart from August 29th, right? I got it right here in front of me. And guess what? If McCade Matire's not cutting it at left guard, then I got Savion Byrd or Bray Walker behind him. I got the other side. I got Jake Taylor, Marcus Alexander, right? There's options to try, especially Savion Byrd and Taylor. I mean, those are two guys I think Oklahoma's really, really excited about. So if they need to, they'll try it.
Yeah, this is by no sorry, I'm blanking on words, but by no stretch is the depth chart finalized. Like, we have a lot of time to kind of figure out how this is all going to play out and settle in, especially along the offensive line. It's rare, at least over the last couple of years, for the offensive line to be settled week 1 into the season. So I think I still believe that McCade Matire is going to be a good player for Oklahoma. I just think it was one of those situations where maybe there was just a bad matchup on the other side of the ball. Or maybe it was the loss of Anton Harrison next to him and having to play next to somebody new for the first time in possibly 8 months. Like, if my guess is right, Matire, Anton Harrison, they've probably been taking almost all of the first team snaps together on the left side of the offensive line. So, having to play with somebody new can kind of change things up a little bit, as I just talked about before. But coming up, we're going to talk a bit about Billy Bowman, what he's added to the special teams unit, and we'll hear what Brent Venables had to say about that as well.
First, though, let me tell you about LinkedIn. Obviously, they are the recruiting sponsor right here of the Locked On Network. LinkedIn, they're great. As you gear up for the fall, you need the right people on your team to help your small business fire on all cylinders. LinkedIn Jobs, it's here to help make it easier to find the people that you want to talk to faster and for free. Create a job post in minutes on LinkedIn Jobs to reach your network and beyond to the world's largest professional network of over 810 million people. Then add your job in the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring so your network can help you find the right people to hire. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. It's why small businesses all rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates that you want to talk to faster. And did you know every week, nearly 40 million job seekers, where are they going? They're visiting LinkedIn. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions, they apply. So Billy Bowman is someone that we are very, very excited about with what he's doing defensively for Oklahoma. John, I think you would agree, just that side of the football. I've kind of been harping on this all week, really just ever since 45-13 over UTEP win final, that Reggie Grimes, Billy Bowman, and Danny Stutzman were, if you had 3 picks to click, right, 3 stars to share, it would be those 3 defensively for Oklahoma. Well, one, Billy Bowman, no, not just Mr. Defense for Oklahoma. He has brought something in the special department, and I love this from Brent Venables.
Like to have that. I mean, that's part of our philosophy, and Billy's a very dynamic football player, and he had a chance to score for sure on one. If we get one guy to do something a little bit better, and so Billy is again very dynamic, and we got a lot of really good dynamic skill guys. So, but overall that aligns, with who we want to be, and an opportunity to score, create field position, create a big play, create momentum. You can do that in all 3 phases without question.
So I probably didn't do the finest job setting that up. So let's backtrack just for a split second here and just tell you that the question to Brent Venables was, hey, Billy Bowman a couple of times in this game versus UTEP, several yards deep into the end zone, decides, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and be aggressive and take this thing out. Is that something you want Oklahoma to be? And look, Brent Venables, you heard him right there. He says, yeah, absolutely, that's who we want Oklahoma to be. That's my vision for this Oklahoma program. And John, you're talking about somebody in Bowman that is a starting safety for you, obviously now is a big piece of the special teams. And we talked about this over the course of the offseason leading into the year, that I thought this was going to be an approach for Oklahoma. It needed to be an approach for Oklahoma. Too many times in the past, I get it. Hey, you got a great offense, so don't risk taking away from the offense. I understand the logic behind it. Great teams don't shy away from being great on special teams, right? I mean, not even great teams, great programs don't shy away, bigger than a great team. The trajectory of a long-term stability of a program, they're not scaredy cats about taking opportunities in special teams. In Oklahoma, again, has shown us with Billy Bowman, Brent Venables right there. Look, they want to be explosive in special teams. And look, it fires me up, John. I can hardly speak. It gets me so pumped up. It's how this game's supposed to be played, baby. 3 phases of football.
That's right. You don't punt one area of the game because you're concerned about a possible turnover. Like, that's just deciding I'm not going to throw the ball because I'm afraid of it being intercepted. You don't just give up on one aspect that could ultimately change the course of a game for you if you're able to get a big play out of it. And I think last year in particular, but also maybe even in 2020, there was zero trust in Oklahoma's ability to return the ball. I think a little bit with the CeeDee Lamb kind of days, there was a little bit more faith placed in him to be able to make a big play happen in the return game. But it's good to see them saying, yeah, even if you get a good feel for what you're seeing in front of you, take off and go. And Billy Bowman made good decisions. I mean, Brent Venables was right. There was one time I thought he was about to break it and just go. Like, he had a chance, and not just an outside chance. I thought like one more missed tackle and he's gone. And I think that's the guy you want having the football. It seems like he's got really good vision for returning kicks, which is a huge aspect of that, and the toughness to be able to break tackles and make plays. And he's got the agility and elusiveness. And it seems like he's got good decision-making as well. He didn't return every single, kick that came his way, but he returned 2 of them, and he got, I think the one of them got past the 25, maybe to the 30. And the other one, just got to like the 20-yard line or so. And so he did a good job. I thought he was adequate and provided some potential that he could return a kick for a touchdown. I think that's going to be something that comes at some point this year. If I'm going to make a bold prediction, Billy Bowman will return a kick for a touchdown this season. It's a rarity in college football these days, but I think he's got the athleticism to make it happen. It's also really intriguing to see Marvin Mims returning punts for you. Your most important offensive player, aside from Dylan Gabriel, back there fielding punts, and he got blasted on one of them where he signaled fair catch, and the guy, I guess, just didn't see it or didn't care. And then, Marvin Mims kind of made a somewhat questionable decision catching it back on the 5 at one point in time. But also, do you let that bounce and then you have to start at the 2? Who knows? So it's hard to judge those decisions in hindsight because you don't know what he's thinking based on where the coverage unit is. If he's thinking, I gotta catch this one and try and move it upfield because it's going to bounce, so they're going to down it at the 1. It's hard to say. So I do love the approach on special teams because if you're going to be an aggressive team and you're going to have an aggressive mentality, you can't decide to play passive in any area because then it undermines your philosophy 100%. That's why I loved the 4th down call, in the second quarter when they're trying to drive towards the end of the half to get a touchdown. Yeah, I mean, you could punt it and just let your defense play. You've got an 11-point lead, no big deal. I think we would have probably questioned that decision, but it would have been reasonable and rational for him to go ahead and punt. But I loved the aggressiveness of going for it and picking that one up and going for the touchdown to really just seal the half off in a nice way and get some momentum before the end of the half so that you could carry that into the third quarter. So big fan of the attitude, the mentality, and I love how it covers all 3 phases of the game.
This is not necessarily directly correlated to that, but I'm just curious to get your take on it because I don't know that we've really, for all of the different topics that we've talked about with the arrival of Brent Venables and now the start of this season and Oklahoma's 1-0, is Brent Venables going to be a gambler at Oklahoma? Early in the Bob Stoops era, you had the riverboat gambling Bob. It was a big part of big game Bob, right? I mean, it was synonymous with Bob Stoops. And that opportunity, of course, did not arise versus UTEP. I'm not expecting that opportunity to arise versus Kent State. And frankly, I don't think it's going to arise in Lincoln, Nebraska either. But what's sort of your early read on that? Will Brent Venables be somebody that surprises us here and there with some fake punts, some fake field goals and the like? Because, I mean, that was a hallmark of early Bob Stoops. And, even later in his tenure here and there in spot situations, he had, surprise fakes that were huge for Oklahoma. I don't know that I have a strong opinion one way or the other. I think my initial opinion is yes, but, I guess we don't really know in that regard, do we?
I would say we don't know, but I would say everything that we know about Brent Venables to this point has me leaning yes, that he will take opportunities as they arise to, go for a fake punt, fake field goal, onside kick out of nowhere. I don't think he'll be as aggressive as like Les Miles was, back in his LSU and Oklahoma State days, but I think he'll pick his spots where, everything's kind of going Oklahoma's way and we're up, 2 touchdowns now. And hey, we're going to kick it onside kick, or we're going to come out of the half onside kick. You just might find it in a weird spot. I think there will be times where we do see a fake punt, especially if it's a fake punt run for Michael Turk. The dude's he's tough, especially if it's like a short yardage situation. He's a guy that you could snap the ball to, and he could probably carry it for 5-10 yards. Like, he's an athletic guy, played safety in high school. So he's got the athleticism to make some plays with his legs. I don't know his ability to throw the football. I couldn't tell you there, but I imagine that he could throw it pretty decently. So it would not surprise me to see them, throw some fakes out there. I hope that he's involved some sort of analytics into his decision-making that shows, people, they rail against analytics all the time, but there's a reason that it's kind of formulated and it's developed and become such a big part of the football consciousness, is that there's value in it. Yes, he's a defensive minded head coach, but we saw on Saturday, he wanted the football. How do you win football games? With points. How do you score points? You have the football. I don't think he's going to be one of these coaches that's just willy nilly with the ball and like, all right, we didn't get our first down. We'll punt it. We'll let the defense do the job. No, you don't score points on defense. You can, but it's not as often as how you can score on offense. He's going to try and make sure his offense has the ball as much as possible, has as many possessions as possible. And so I think that's going to mean a lot of fourth down calls for the Oklahoma Sooners going for it, whether it's a 4th and 2 or 4th and 1. I wouldn't even be surprised if it's like 4th and 4 from the opponent's 40-yard line. If they're looking at like a 56-yard field goal or a 4th and 4, it would not surprise me one bit to see him go for it on that in that situation, because again, this is going to be a very aggressive head coach trying to emulate an aggressive attitude with his football team. And you can't just do it on one side of the ball. You got to do it everywhere. And I would love to see them be an aggressive 4th down team. It's not always going to work out. They'll get stopped at times, but that doesn't mean they should shy away from it.
Well, that's also, you could get into saying, okay, well, that's a lack of trust defensively, or there's that. It's also like trust in your offense, right? That these guys are going to go pick this thing up, and they're going to pick up that 4th down in these situations where Oklahoma takes that kind of a gamble. I just think that's going to be an interesting thing to follow with Brent Venables this season and beyond, because right now, I don't know. And I don't know if there's a rhyme or reason to, okay, offensive-minded coaches, okay, sure, probably a little bit more open to gambling on a 4th down where you go for it with your offense, right? Or I don't know. Is there a rhyme or reason? Or does an offensive-minded head coach, are they almost more conservative at times? Like, no, if we don't pick up this 4th down, you would think that it would lend itself to them being more likely to go for it on 4th down. And then the special surprises, right? Defensive-minded head coach, offensive-minded head coach, does it matter one way or the other? Just interesting to think about.
Yeah, it's a really good question. You're talking, and I'm thinking about Ron Rivera, another heavily defensive-minded coach that got the nickname Riverboat Ron from his time, with San Diego, then San Diego and then Carolina. Now he's with Washington, but a guy who's also very aggressive in his decision-making. And maybe it's just one of those, like, it's not a lack of trust in the defense. It's a complete trust in the defense that, hey, we're going to go for it on 4th and 1 from the 50-yard line. If we don't get it, I trust my defense to get a stop. I'm not worried about it. So I'm going to go for it here, because if the offense keeps the ball, great, we have a better chance to score. If we don't, we're going to get a stop. No big deal. They'll just punt it right back to us. So maybe it's one of those, like, a defensive-minded head coach has more belief in his kind of that side of the ball, where the offensive-minded head coach may not have as much faith in the defense, and so may not make those same kind of decisions. I don't know. It might be why we saw, Lincoln Riley kicking 50-yard field goals at times, when we think, maybe why not go for it in that situation? Why are we settling for so many 50-yard field goals? Yes, Gabe Burkich can kick them, but should we be asking him to kick him, that many times in a game or throughout the course of the season? So very, very interesting thing. Anything else you want to touch on the special teams aspect? I thought Zach Schmidt kicked well. No issues from there.
Yeah, no, which is, of course, great to see when you're breaking in somebody new. You want to see it go well, and obviously Oklahoma saw that get off to a great start. I just love, again, just off the top, Brent Venables, the aggressive nature in special teams, I think has been a missing link for Oklahoma. So I think it's great that that's finding its way back to the Sooners.
Last thing we want to touch on, Oklahoma Sooners now number 7 in both the USA Today coaches poll and the AP top 25, moving on up. It takes some teams losing in front of you to move up, but that's okay. I think what's interesting about this is I feel like a Brent Venables team that wins might end up getting more respect than Lincoln Riley's team did last year. As we saw a team that was undefeated midway through the season, not ranked amongst the other undefeated teams at the top of the college football playoff rankings. It just makes me wonder, especially if we continue to see blowout wins like this, or wins in which Oklahoma covers. They don't even have to blow teams out. If they just cover the point spread, will that be enough to kind of raise the respect level for Oklahoma and bump them into that, top 4, top 5, top 6 at some point later in the season? What do you think?
Yeah, if they're playing good defense, right? If there's a tangible difference in what's going on that side of the football for Oklahoma, and then all of a sudden you can attach it to, well, hey, Brent Venables is now the head coach in Norman. And, oh, by the way, I don't know if you guys know this, but he brought in Jay Valai. He brought in Brandon Hall. He brought in Ted Roof. He brought in Miguel Chavis. So it's Todd Bates. Dare I forget the poet tonight. It's a total overhaul with the defensive staff for Oklahoma. So you see Oklahoma playing good defense, and all of a sudden they're winning convincingly, and they're turning people over and doing all of that, and they're undefeated, then yeah, I think there's going to be a different type of respect, or just a different narrative surrounding Oklahoma because of who the head football coach is and who the assistants are. I mean, there's a belief that these guys, they're going to coach good defense, right? We've seen them do it.
Yeah. And I have no reason to doubt that that's going to continue. I think what we saw against UTEP is kind of just the beginning. I mean, we saw an aggressive unit that was flying around the football. Obviously, they'll face some tougher teams as we go along, and better passing games. But UTEP's passing game wasn't bad. I mean, against UNT, they could have been more accurate. Hardison could have been more accurate, could have completed some more passes, but they've got a couple really nice wide receivers, and they're making some plays. And it wasn't because they were out of position or they were getting burnt in one-on-one coverages. UTEP just made plays. And so I'll be really curious to see how that translates later on down the road. I was looking for a picture of Miguel Chavis as you were talking, because as I'm watching the game, the thing that stuck out is just these huge wrap, Oakley style sunglasses that he wears, and just reminded me of kind of like, I don't know, Terminator meets Keanu Reeves from Bill and Ted's a little bit, just this guy that, I don't know, he kind of has that feel to me. I can crush you, but also, what's up?
Yeah, no, I hear what you're saying. It's like, that this man is a crusher of souls if he wants to be, and yet he's kind of got like this surfer teddy bear vibe about him as well. So it's like, it's just the perfect match, right? I mean, that's what you want in assistant football coach. At some point, I don't know, maybe that needs to develop into something else to be a head football coach for Miguel Chavis. But I mean, in terms of what he brings to the table as an assistant for OU, I just think personality-wise, who he is, I totally dig it. I love the energy he brings on the sidelines, him racing out. I told you the other day, I mean, him racing out and doing the 4th down sign, I was like, oh, man, here we go. It's a new sheriff's in town, baby, in Norman.
Yeah, these guys are fired up for their guys. They're not laying back, playing cool. Like, no, man, they're right in the middle of it, cheering these guys on. Like they like, you could have pulled them out of the stands. And I think that's fun. Like, I think that keeps everybody's energy up, and that's going to be a really kind of fun thing to follow throughout the season, because it's a long season. Like, the grind of playing any sport, it becomes a grind at times, and you need that enthusiasm. You need that, encouragement along the way to kind of keep you going, because I mean, these guys have been working since January, through, Jerry Schmidt's, strength program, spring ball, summer workout conditioning program, fall ball. And now here we are. Like, it's a long 9 months just to get to this point. And then you've got a full season of football to play. So it's cool to see a group of coaches that are so enthusiastic for the game and for their players, because I think that's going to help encourage these guys and help push them through what is a grind of a season. And it's guys that have done it. DeMarco, he, high level player. Miguel Chavis played in the NFL. Jay Valai was a big time player, up at Wisconsin. I'm sure I'm missing somebody, but I mean, a lot of guys, Damian Washington, like a dude who played high level college football, had opportunities in the NFL. Like, these are a group of coaches that know what it takes to endure the grind of a long football season. And so, yeah, I'm pumped. Kent State, it's coming. We got game 2 this Saturday. We'll have some thoughts on it as we get ready for the Golden Flashes. We might have to talk about where that ranks in terms of nicknames in the college football hierarchy. But this is one of those teams that ranks in like the bottom 30 in most of those 1 to 131 rankings in college football. So kind of on that same level of UTEP, might not be much of a challenge, but we'll still be able to learn a lot about our team. What's one thing, just kind of real quick before we get out of here, what's one thing that you're hoping to learn about the Oklahoma Sooners when they play Kent State in week 2?
That these young wide receivers can ball, right? I mean, we heard so much about that and yet saw none of it versus UTEP. And UTEP, you would have thought, was the perfect scenario to see a little bit of that. So, we got a little bit of a peek at Javonte Barnes. I know that he, put the one on the ground, but I'd like to see the young skill talent offensively for Oklahoma at the wide receiver position, in part because I've been predicting that, right? I mean, come on now, guys, make me look smart out there. But no, my predictions aside, I just think that since we've heard so much about it, okay, well, why am I hearing so much about it if I'm not seeing any of it in these, games, especially versus UTEP and Kent State, right? I mean, look, I think Nebraska stinks like everybody else, but I don't know how many other opportunities a bunch of young guys that aren't right there at the top of the 2 deep are going to get after Kent State week, right? I mean, we'll see. So that's one thing for me. I'm sure there's others, but just off the top of my head, that's sort of the first thing that came to mind.
Yeah, it's one of those things I'm interested in watching as well, because I think you got to give Jaleel Fruch another opportunity to make plays and take advantage of his opportunities. The one drop he had, I didn't like it. It wasn't great. The ball was right in his hands and just didn't make the play. But I think we've seen what he can do. Back in the Alamo Bowl against Oregon, I think he had a really, really good performance. At the same time, you've got guys that are good players waiting in the wings, like a Jaden Gibson, a Nick Anderson, an LV Bunkley Shelton, a JJ Hester. There are it's like we talked about with the offensive line. There are options. And so I think we need to start seeing those, because Jaleel Fruch, he had the second most snaps out of your wide receivers on Saturday. Maybe he played longer because the game was out of hand and you sat Marvin Mims and Theo Weiss. But I mean, Marvin Mims played more than any other wide receiver on the day. So I'd like to see a little bit more rotation at that spot, give some other guys some opportunities to play a little bit more. But again, I'm not saying don't play Jaleel Fruch, but give somebody else a series, like see what somebody else might be able to do with those opportunities. It'll be interesting to see. We got a lot more to learn about this team. I think we got to see a little bit more defensively as well, and we'll continue to talk about that on Locked On Sooners. So make sure you're subscribed to the show wherever you get your podcasts. Again, we're free and available on all platforms. Subscribe to the show on YouTube. Help us reach our goal of 3,000 subscribers by the Red River Showdown. Right now, we're sitting at just over 2,600. So we've got a little bit of ways to go, but hey, you've gotten us this far. We know you're going to get us there. So make sure you smash the subscribe button. My brothers told me never say smash the subscribe button, but I had to throw it in there one time just for the YouTube element of the show. So until next time, he's Josh Helmer. I'm John Williams. We'll catch you then. Boomer Sooner.